All right, why don't we go and get started here? I want to welcome everyone back to the Midwest Mountaineering Outdoor Adventure Expo. This virtual presentation will be on kayak fishing 101. It's sort of an introductory, uh, some introductory information regarding kayak fishing. My name is Adan Torres. I'm the operations manager here at Midwest Mountaineering and an avid angler. Um, Kayak fishing, if you're watching this video or for this presentation, you probably are well aware that it's been an exploding industry in the last couple of years. A lot of advancements in the watercrafts, a lot of modifications, and a lot of opportunity to get out on the water and enjoy uh, your favorite body of water, chasing your favorite species, or just cruising around on a really stable, well-made boat. This presentation is really rather informal. We are live on the outdooradventureexpo.com site, and we have a chat box there, so you can drop in some questions there. I'll try to get to them live. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and start. Um, so kayak fishing 101. What to expect when kayak fishing? For me, fishing is a very addictive sport. It's sort of my way to kind of slow down and find some peace and quiet. Whether I'm on a boat or wet wading, I really don't have an entire specific preference. I do say that when kayak fishing, you definitely get to cover more water and are able to fish the water much more effectively. Um, One thing to plan for when kayak fishing is sort of a long day. Obviously, you can make it as long as you want, but there is the you know transporting of the watercraft, the takedown, the breakdown aspect, the setting up, um, the actual transportation of getting to wherever it is you want to fish. Um, Most often, when I tell my partner that I'm going to be out fishing, they know well that it's they're, they've been well trained, I guess, or know that it's going to be a long day. That I won't see them maybe until sunset or dinner time or something to that effect. Another thing that I found when kayak fishing is that I like to have everything on a string. Since you're on a boat and a lot of this equipment is made to float or is made to be in and around near water, it doesn't mean everything is going to stay right nearby you. So in the event that you capsize or are fishing rivers or some rapids or some fast moving water, having things secured to your boat is one great way to not lose items in the water. So that's sort of my reminder is everything on a string. I find that redundancy is pretty key. Having a paddle leash, having maybe an extra paddle width that you can break down, especially if you're out by yourself. If you're out meeting up with some buddies, hopefully they're willing to help you should something happen or tow you back to shore. But plan for any sort of anything that might come up. If you have maybe an older boat, maybe really look at your boat before you get on the water. Look for any imperfections in the boat. Make sure your kayak plug is there, your drain plug. Maybe even carry a few extra. I always order a few extra, keep them in my glove box. Um, um, so redundancy, just kind of double backing yourself and having a good plan. I found that when kayak fishing, I get exhausted after the long day, but it's a good feeling. These boats typically are not very light. They tend to weigh in the range of probably in the lightest side, maybe 40 pounds on up to 150, 120 to 150 pounds. So um, they're heavy, they're big, they're often a roto molded plastic, so really dense um, uh, poly plastic boat, the kind that you would find in like a whitewater kayak or a touring kayak. You don't really find kayak fishing kayaks made out of Kevlar or fiberglass. There's maybe some boutique manufacturers out there that do that, but at least in some of the models that we carry here, they tend to be rotomolded. I think Eddieline makes some ABS plastic two-piece construction ones as well, which do end up being quite a bit lighter. So think about that when you're choosing your fishing kayak and how what tools you may need to help you get that boat loaded and unloaded be it a rooftop or the back of a truck or a trailer. There are accessories that can help make that experience much easier and less physical for you. So be sure to talk to your local paddle sports shop and ways to helping you get that boat out and off much safer and easier. And then one thing I always put the evil sun. I'm a person that just really likes to cover up. I like sun hoodies, long sleeves. I like fishing gloves. I like long, loose fitting pants. Almost my footwear changes depending on where I'm fishing. But I mentioned the evil sun only to kind of remind myself that you know, in a moment's notice the weather can change. So having a windbreaker or rain shell, maybe even an extra layer in a dry bag is not a bad idea. So just something to keep in mind. And having really just plenty of water with you. Beer is made of water, but that will dehydrate you. I always pack more water than necessary, or even maybe bring a water filter and just keep that on your boat if you have a spare one. And just making sure that that water filter itself is clean and usable will help you get water from a lake or river that you may be fishing. Just a simple kayak checklist. My background is, mostly comes from hiking, backpacking, so a lot of this stuff is kind of just a crossover from that, but this is a bit more geared for fishing and so your fishing gear, obviously. Choose your favorite fishing rod or rods in this case, be it conventional, fly, bait casters, what have you, tenkara, I guess even. Sunglasses, sometimes even multiple pairs. Amber lenses, polarized lenses are often really helpful for reducing any sort of eye strain. Obviously, helps you see in the water better. Some sort of glasses retainer, Croakies or another brand. There's many out there. Lots of retailers sell them even at gas stations. Doesn't hurt to have the sunglasses anchored somehow to your hat or around your neck should you take a dip in the water or just lean down and the glasses slip off. Sunscreen, lip balm, insect repellent, water in bottles or a reservoir, plenty of snacks. Some people, depending on what kind of trip they're doing, emergency shelter, a bivy sack, or a lightweight tent. I've done a few fishing trips down the St. Croix and I've camped and fished, and that's always a wonderful time. So that kind of trip is going to be a bit different than, let's say, I would be fishing at Phelan or Gray's Bay or something like that. Those are probably just a bit more day trips for me. So cell phone in a protective case, waterproof, always nice. I would even add in there sort of a battery backup, um, just so you always have battery power. Credit card, small amount of cash is always helpful. Permits and licenses, obviously. Every state's a little different, so I would recommend that you inquire with your local DNR to find out, to find exactly how you need to be licensed to fish for the type of species that you're fishing for and the time of year that you're fishing for. Trip itinerary, I almost always tell someone where I'm fishing. One thing I found to be super helpful is toilet paper or some sanitary wipes and a trowel. I just keep that in my kit. Um, you never know when you have to go and relying on leaves or otherwise or strips of clothing is you can get by, but you're much better prepared if you just have a nice gallon Ziploc bag with a toilet paper and trowel and some hand sanitizer in there. Um, Menstrual urinary products, I mentioned that just to kind of as a reminder. Um, Water treatment, I kind of alluded to this earlier. Water filter, life straw, be free, fill and drink kind of bottles all work. If you're curious enough to, uh, a lot of these filters will only protect you from bacteria and not viruses. So you want to kind of look into the quality of your filter and the types of water that you're filtering from. Generally, if you're in lakes, the center of the lake and a few feet down is typically the cleanest. It's going to have less sediment and uh, particulates floating in it. If you're filtering water near more contaminated areas, your filter is going to clog up a little bit faster, so you might have to clean that filter, back flush it, etc. So really know how your filter works if you're going to rely on that. I like powdered energy drinks, like electrolytes, as little energy boosters. I always have binoculars, a little guidebook, or like an Avenza map on my phone. Um, uh, there's a lot of fishing type of apps out there. I can't think of one of the big ones, but contour lines, things like that. Even an atlas, classic spiral bound atlas, or DeLorme hardcover atlas is nice. And I mentioned this earlier, the phone battery backup. Just a couple things I like to keep close by, just in case I need them. Why fish from a kayak? Number one, I feel like the access is a lot better. Growing up, I definitely was a shore fisher person for a long time, and you know, uh, would always see people out on boats and just assume that they were catching bigger, badder fish, and that isn't always true, but it definitely gives you a lot more access to fish your favorite water. With a kayak, you can almost launch it from really just about anywhere. There's very few water that are off limits. You can kind of escape the pressure from the boat ramp. Um, you can kind of avoid the chaos that sometimes happens at boat ramps with the vehicles and larger boats draining their water and this and that. So I love that aspect of it. You can park your car, load your kayak onto a cart, take it down to the shore, right, literally right to the spot you want to go, and slip it in. If there are checking for invasive species, you want to be sure to exit at that point so that they can check your boat and make sure that we're not transferring invasive species to other lakes. So just do be mindful about that. It's an important aspect of our environment to keep our waters healthy. Um, Number two, low maintenance. Engine powered boats often require a bit more upkeep. There's a bit more mechanicals and electronics involved with those boats. I say that with a bit of a grin because as I see a lot of these fishing kayaks, they are pretty outfitted with trolling motors, light systems, sound systems, and even in some cases, transducers, fish finders, etc. I'm sure there's a bunch of other stuff that could be listed. So you can make them as simple as you want or as complicated as you want. But I tend to find that they're pretty low maintenance. The registration aspect is really low cost, really I would say accessible to a lot of people. In some states, you don't even need to register your boat, so there's some savings there. In a lot of cases, you can put these boats right on top of your car with a nominal temporary sort of boat rack or a more of a fixed rack like a Yakima or Thule or Malone system. Here at Mid Mountaineering, we sell Yakima gear. I know there's Rack Attack in town. There's a few other retailers in town that also sell Rook Frac systems. If you're curious about buying a fishing kayak, I would definitely think about what car you're going to be using most to transport it and try to find a rack system that will work well with that car or pickup or whatever it may be. Number three, stealth factor. These fishing kayaks are really quiet. They slip across the water. They often aren't the fastest boats, but they are definitely often the most stable. So um, you can stand up, you can and cast with these things. You can, cast as big of a fly rod as you want using your whole body and often in these fishing boats. Oftentimes you'll have to kind of find your sea legs in that specific boat, but as soon as you do, I mean, a lot of these boats probably range in widths from, at the low end, probably 30 inches all the way up to 40, maybe, with most probably averaging, 34 to 36 inches wide. So gives you a nice big platform to stand, spread your legs, and get a good platform to stand up. Also allows you a lot of workable area to kneel down, to sit down, to sit on the side of the boat, hang your feet in the water. Maybe even have a four-legged friend or maybe even another fishing partner, depending on the size of the boat. So that kind of leads into the versatility. These boats, there are differences between the boats. There's definitely some more flat water style fishing kayaks. In flat water, I'm talking about lakes. And then there's moving water fishing kayaks, rivers. Um, how do you choose? I would say, try to focus on what you're going to be fishing, what type of water you're going to be fishing the most, 90% or more of the time. But these boats, they're really adaptable and work well in a lot of different kinds of water. But there are some differences that that can, I think, can help in certain waters make that fishing experience a little bit better. Um, some of these boats are even made to fish, in oceans. So um, you can fish anything from ocean, large like reservoirs, estuaries, ponds, bass ponds, little creeks, etc. Um, Number five, customizable. You can really deck these things out as much as you'd like. Something as simple as adding extra foam padding for more comfort on the bottom of your feet, to all the way to, as I mentioned earlier, like lighting systems, sound systems, navigation systems, fish finding systems. Really, the options are endless, and it seems like every time I go back to you know kayak fishing uh, forum or website, there's always some sort of new advancement in gear or ways to sort of trick out your fishing kayak. So a lot of great information out there on YouTube. A lot of really good mods and hacks and stuff. So um, I would say I would encourage people to really look at some of that stuff and kind of try to decide, what's your fishing style and how do you want to fish, and then from then try to find the boat that's going to match that. I've seen a trend in some of these fishing kayaks in the beginning when they first came out. They were really kind of, they had a lot of accessories with them. They came with rod holders, they came with um, tackle boxes, they came with hydration bags and stuff like that, and a lot of great accessories that just kind of get you right out in the water right away. But after talking with customers, I find that oftentimes those accessories that they were including didn't really fit that particular angler's fishing style. So they had these accessories that maybe they weren't going to use right then and there, or maybe weren't going to use at all. The trend that I'm seeing now is that some of these fishing kayaks, these companies are making maybe slightly more um, entry level boats as far as the price point. They're sort of scaling back on the number of accessories they include, which makes the boat cheaper. It makes it cleaner, and by cleaner I mean there's less stuff on the deck, the working platform. So I think it allows that angler to sort of build the boat to their needs versus having all this stuff that gets included with the boat that you may or may not use, depending on your fishing style. But that's just something I personally noticed, and that made me maybe more suitable to just my particular fishing style. How to choose a kayak for fishing? There's a couple different styles. There's sit inside versus a sit on top. Um, the sit inside is going to be, one vendor that comes to mind is Native Watercraft. Their Ultimate FX series is kind of a sit-in style fishing kayak. It looks like a poly a canoe with a couple thwarts in there for structure. So you kind of get this sort of canoe style paddling experience with the stability of a fishing sit on top platform as well. So someone who's maybe coming from a canoe background that maybe wants to use their canoe paddles, the native Ultimate FX series I think would be a nice fit. Sitting inside will also keep the inside of the boat a bit drier. A sit inside style fishing kayak does have a one major con, and there are ways around this, but since it's a sit-in style like a canoe, it can capsize and can fill with water. So how do you mitigate that? You can get float bags and other accessories to help should that boat turn upside down, keep the boat buoyant and not allow it to take on so much water. The one benefit to sit on top kayaks is that the floor is self-draining. So as the water spills onto the boat on top by your feet, there's scupper holes that essentially drain the water out. So does that make these boats virtually unsinkable? sort of in a way. They do have bulkheads, storage spaces up in the front and the rear, oftentimes in the middle too, that allow you to access the boat, the hull inside the boat. That's really good for extending wiring or even storing extra gear, etc. But assuming that those latches and those bulkheads are sealed tight, these sit on top style boats are self-draining, therefore virtually unsinkable, barring a big crack in the hull or something like that. I tend to prefer the sit on top for that reason, and also because of the more open, clean deck. I tend to fly fish more, so I try to keep my deck nice and clean and open to minimize any line snags that I may experience while fishing. So having a nice open floor plan for me is the way that I personally like to fish. And So that's kind of a big difference between the sit in versus a sit on top. Um, these boats come in a variety of lengths. I've seen them probably as short as maybe 10 foot all the way up to 15, 16 foot probably. The longer the boat, typically the faster it is. And the heavier the boat, the more the boat is going to be in the water. Therefore, it's going to probably track straighter. So if you're crossing bigger water, um, bigger acreage size of water, a longer boat will help get you to that fishing spot across the lake a little faster. If you're just paddling, a shorter boat is going to be definitely more maneuverable. You're going to probably have to paddle it a little bit more to keep it moving as its momentum slows down with the waves. Smaller boats like that in that 9, 10, 11, maybe 12-foot range are definitely more maneuverable, probably better suited for rivers, little bass ponds, backwaters, etc. It's going to get you in those little nooks and crannies a little bit easier with the maneuverability and just the overall length of the boat. Um, the width has a bit to do with it. The wider the boat, typically the slower, but also that typically also means the more stable it is. So, I suppose there's probably some sort of relationship based on how wide a boat should be given a specific person and their maybe their weight or their height, overall size. Um, I'm not a very large person, maybe 145 pounds, and most of these boats probably have a 300 to 400 pound capacity, so you could really pile a lot of gear on these boats, and um, they will support you and all your gear. So they're really made really tough and um, can support a lot of abuse and wear and tear. So um, for me, a 36-inch wide boat is more than enough. I'm very stable on that boat. I've even gone out with my 5-year-old son and fished, the both of us, on bigger water with our 14 and a half foot fishing kayak. Um, you're probably aware that there's a couple different ways to maneuver this fishing kayak. You can traditional paddle, kayak paddle. Given that a lot of these boats are fairly wide, you're probably going to end up looking, if you have a kayak and are thinking about using that kayak paddle, you might find that it's just a little too short. Most of these fishing kayaks, you're probably going to end up with, a kayak paddle in the range, maybe 240 on the shortest, all the way up to possibly 270 centimeters in length. Um, Basically, that's just allowing you to get those paddle blades out away from the boat and paddle because the boat's so wide. If you are more of a recreational paddler, the longer the paddle is, the better suited that would be for you. A high angle paddler will probably prefer a shorter paddle because they're bringing up the blade that's not in the water is just going to be more vertical up in the air. So that blade that's in the water is going to be nice and tucked in close to the boat. That's oftentimes the best spot to paddle. It's the most resistant and closest to the boat will help you keep going straighter. Um, with regard to paddles, in these fishing kayaks, I tend to find that if a few $100 when comparing fishing kayaks disappears pretty quickly. It's hard to kind of discern, maybe why a boat is a few $100 more than another boat, or why one's a few $100 less than another boat. Um, if it's within your budget, I would take those few $100 and probably secure a nice either fiberglass or carbon fiber paddle, if at all possible. The reason I say that is because fiberglass and carbon fiber blades on paddles flex less. Therefore, when you're paddling these heavier, wider boats, that blade is just a bit more efficient in the water. If you're paddling with a plastic bladed paddle, it'll work just fine. You'll notice that if you take it on the ground and kind of flex it, it'll have a lot more bend. And when you're paddling and pushing water to get back to your spot or just to get to your back to your car, a fiberglass or a carbon fiber paddle will bend less, therefore push water more efficiently for you. Also, those fiberglass blades and carbon fiber blades are just lighter weight, so on a long day fishing, your shoulders, your arms, etc., will probably be just slightly less fatigued. Um, the next category of how to maneuver these kayaks would be sort of pedal driven. There's a couple different styles out there. I know Native Outdoors has their native propel. Jackson Kayaks has their flex drive. Hobie has their like fin system. I'm not entirely sure what it's called. I've had experience with quite a few. I'm not really particularly brand loyal. I would say that for my particular fishing style, the pedal system does not work because of the fly fishing aspect. I particularly don't want a pedal mechanism in between my legs, taking up floor space and causing more snag points for my fly line. I think if I was maybe more of a uh, traditional fisher person, bait caster, spinning, etc., pedal drive kayak would be the probably the way to go. The pedal drive kayaks probably operate at you know they move at a pretty good clip. They'll also have a rudder control, so you're almost hands free. You can set your rudder to direct you, and you just start pedaling. Excuse me. With most of these manufacturers, they offer a reverse option as well. I believe with the Jackson system, you have to sort of engage it with sort of a clutch system. With the native, you can literally just sort of like a tricycle style, just start pedaling backwards. That's helpful for helping you hold your position while you're sort of maybe dropping anchor or deploying a drift sock or a drag chain. Um, Also helps you kind of fight the wind, position yourself. So the pedal drive is I think, a really versatile, huge accessory to consider if it fits within your fishing style. Now, a lot of the boats, like from Native, can be ordered without the pedal mechanism, and that's something you can get later. It does drastically reduce the price of the boat, which is nice. So, if you have some budgetary constraints, you can kind of get the kayak first, maybe get the pedal mechanism later if you decide to do that. And often with these boats too, you can opt for installing a trolling motor. Side mount. Some of these boats have a rear sort of transom mount. There's even front sort of bow mounted, so the trolling motor would hang right off the front. You can deploy it just like you would on a bass boat or any other type of fishing boat. Um, you can The sky's the limit, I think, really with trolling motors. You can have remote control, foot control, etc. So that really just opens up the opportunities to be a bit more hands free. And then the last bullet point on this particular page is stand-up paddleboards. Actually, that's kind of how I got my start. I was looking for a bit more stability and kind of a lighter weight option, and I found that a stand-up paddleboard actually worked well for me. There are a few manufacturers out there that at one point or another made fishing specific paddleboards. Jackson had a superficial and a supernatural, I think, too, that had some unique lashing points or extra wide hulls and platforms. So that don't rule out a stand-up paddleboard. You can always strap a chair to it or strap a cooler to it and create a standing platform or sitting platform, and that's another great way to kind of at least enter this type of fishing. Um, if you're watching live, be sure to drop some questions into the chat box over at the outdooradventureexpo.com site, and I would love to find out your guys' thoughts on fishing kayaks and maybe some tips and tricks that you guys might be willing to share. Um, how to outfit a kayak for fishing. Fishing. This is where kind of the maybe some of the more fun stuff comes into play here. A couple things you'll need, obviously a paddle. A lot of these seats here, you can see in the photo here, it's a nice high back seat with aluminum frame. So a lot of these fishing kayaks are built for comfort. Um, Mesh back seat, so you get a lot of breathability and ventilation that way. You can hang stuff off the back of the seats. There's oftentimes like storage bags, or you can hang a hydration bladder there as well. Um, oftentimes the seats will have, you can adjust the trim forwards and backwards. You can adjust the height, kind of a low paddling position and then a high sort of fishing position. You can see in this picture here, this particular angler is standing, and that gives you kind of more of a sight fishing type of approach, which allows you to see further out, see further down, and really give you a much more uh, advantage over the in your specific fishing. Rod holders, there's all different kinds. There's some for bait casters, spinning. There's fly rod specific ones. In many cases, you just don't even need them. You just lay it down right in front of you. Oftentimes, the way that these boats are molded, they will have sort of like molded V sort of staging areas up by the front of the boat. So as you set your fly rod or fishing rod down in front of you, the middle point of the rod or the tip can be kind of cradled in this little V up by the front of the boat. Just keeps it off the sort of the ground and keeps it a little bit organized, especially in maybe some choppy water. Um, you can add anchor systems, anchor trolleys, drift socks, drag chains. There's a lot of ways to sort of help you in positioning your boat. Leashes for paddles and rods. Um, some folks, use a crate system and have a bunch of rods at their disposal off the back. Even those sometimes get lashed to the crates just in case there's some choppy water. You don't want to lose things. If it's behind you and you're looking forward, you may not notice it. So kind of reinforces that sort of redundancy and everything kind of on a string note that I made at the beginning of the presentation. Um, Tackle storage and organization. A lot of these boats have really a lot of great organizational aspects to them already. Um, Oftentimes there's a center console that you can flip up and store some stuff. There's side mount or along the inside of the hull. There's oftentimes little flip out boxes you can stuff um, tackle boxes under there, in there, or under the seat. Uh, Behind the seat you can attach a storage bag or hang a day pack with your stuff. Looks like this person here behind the seat has sort of a maybe some sort of watertight dry duffel bag. So a lot of ways to really organize your gear. I would say take some time and when you get a fishing kayak, take it into the yards, spend a few hours setting it up, and kind of sitting in it and reaching back and seeing, what kinds of items might you need at a within an arm's reach, and place those items in a spot where they're going to be accessible for you, be it a landing net or a paddle clip or your favorite rod out back or your least favorite rod in back. You know, so definitely take some time and try to organize your fishing kayak, and I think this if you can spend time doing that, you'll find yourselves with more time on the water fishing. Um, and a lot of the time, I find myself doing some of this work the night before, and putting some of the stuff into my boat so when I get to the water, I know it's there and it's ready to go. A cooler, obviously you're going to want to stay hydrated and fed. Choose your own adventure there as big as you want. Oftentimes I will take the seat out and just use the cooler as the seat. Gives me more of a sitting platform. There are some coolers you can strap sort of a soft-sided, like Crazy Creek kind of chair to, or coolers that have padding already built into the top that you can stand on or sit on. Um, and You can have all your favorite beverages in there. Landing net, as I mentioned earlier. One thing to keep in mind with these fishing kayaks is even though they're incredibly stable, they still will tip. One piece of advice that I can give is if your head goes beyond the outside of the boat, over the edge of the boat, you're likely going to tip. Um, Once the head starts going in a direction, the body's going to want to follow. So it's that sort of momentum that kind of prevents you from tipping, especially if you have a fish with you. Now, I bring this up because landing nets, they come in a variety of different shapes and sizes. So have the right size net for the type of fish you're fishing. But there are some nets out there now that they're kind of new to me, and they've probably been around for a long time, but they kind of have sort of a shorter handle, but kind of a forearm brace. They kind of remind me of those old like wrist rockets or slingshots that have that plastic sort of forearm brace with the aluminum struts going down the side. That allows you to use more of your arm and gives you a bit more leverage if you're fishing for bass or pike or muskie or catfish, whatever it may be, carp. Allows you to get the fish into the net, into the boat a little bit better than using something with a longer, skinnier handle. Those I've seen a bit more recently in some of the videos I've been watching. Drift shoot or drift sock is nice. Helps you kind of slow down if you're in a windy day. Kind of helps you find that underwater current and allows you to kind of move with the water. So those are kind of fun to try every now and then. Nice little thing to have in your fishing kayak if you're fishing deeper water, especially. If you're fishing shallower water or a river, I tend to prefer a drag chain. Um, Drag chain basically just get a section of chain from the hardware store. I like to wrap it in a bicycle tube and then zip tie the ends of it, and then put a nice accessory cord, really strong rope on there. And the tube will help the chain. Uh, it'll minimize it snagging. With rocks and branches and stuff that might be underwater that you can't see. So that tube just kind of keeps that chain bouncing off the stuff. And the drag chain does essentially that. It just kind of drags on the ground on the under the water and just kind of slows down your watercraft. So it gives you a little bit more fishing time. Um, Oftentimes when you're standing, you're trying to manage fishing, but also keeping the boat in position. So having a suitable anchor or drift bag or anchor chain will or a combination of those will really help, or even possibly two anchors. Kayak cart, super helpful, especially if you're going out by yourself. Kayak cart gets the kayak to the water and back to your car. Even if you are using a landing, some of these carts you can flip upside down and use the wheels as sort of a loading system to get the kayak back up onto your vehicle or truck bed, etc. Fish finder, GPS. I mean, the possibilities are endless there. I That's something that I particularly have not dove into. I don't necessarily um, know entirely much about them, and it's probably for good reason. I don't really have the bandwidth right now to entertain another sort of hobby. I realize that some of them are very simple and some of them are very complicated, but that's something that you can definitely add to your fishing kayak. And then I just put etc. because this is by no means a definitive list. There's so many things that you can outfit these fishing kayaks with. Let's see, moving on. Safety gear, PFD, personal flotation device. Find one that works for you, fits good. I tend to like the more traditional sort of, uh, center locking, either three buckle, sort of traditional livery style or zipper style. The side entry, sort of over the head. If you're not wearing it, it's going to be harder to put on in a case of emergency versus the more traditional sort of, sport coat or style fishing life jackets. I like this. I like a safety whistle on my life jacket. It's attached to it. A knife, like an NSR Copilot or something. The reason why you would have a knife is if you, let's say, were to capsize and you're in your in your PFD, you might get snagged up on a tree. You can kind of cut yourself free. Um, uh, 360-degree visibility light and flag are super helpful. Um, some kayak anglers like to put the red and green. I tend to prefer a white light. I think red and green are typically more used for motorboats or larger fishing vessels. Someone please correct me if I'm wrong, but a nice white 360-degree visible light I think is plenty. Oftentimes these fishing kayaks are, they have some wild colors to them, or they have more of the natural colors. So, and being that they're typically smaller, if you're fishing bigger water, that's maybe more trafficked with boats, power boats, motorized boats. Having a visibility light will definitely keep you safer, and especially on those, you know, dusk or dawn fishing outings. Drier wetsuit is helpful if you're fishing colder water or early in the season or later in the season. Just going to help you regulate your temperature, um, or wetsuit even possibly. Um, some protective clothing I like to mention. I tend to prefer SPF 35 or SPF 50. Um, you know, cover up yourself as much as you'd like. I oftentimes will bring in a couple different items. I'll even bring a windbreaker or a rain shell sometimes, even if it's no rain in the forecast, just because if I get wet and the wind picks up, it's just one way to keep me a little bit warmer. I like a weather radio with me, just in case my phone kind of dies or I'm not getting a good signal. Allows me to check in on the weather just in case. Flares, I think, are a good option, or a backup battery. Tow rope or throw bag is nice. Maybe not necessarily for you, but just in case you're out and you see someone who might need some help, that would be a nice thing to throw to them. First aid kit, labeled with all the essentials that you may need, and if it's something that requires specific instructions, I would include those in there so that if someone else has to administer them, they know how to do that. Where to go kayak fishing? Here in the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area, I mean, we have and in really the tri-state area, we have thousands upon thousands of lakes. There's a lot of great urban fishing here within 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes of most areas in the metro. Um, a lot of rivers nearby. The St. Croix is one of my favorites. The Rum, the Mississippi, the Root down in the southeastern part of the state. Then you have the Coggin, the Platte, the Wisconsin, the St. Louis. Um, Really, the possibilities are endless. I suppose you could bring it to the Boundary Waters as well. I have not done that. I think there's some restrictions maybe regarding uh, carts, um, on some of the portages. I would look into that. I'm sorry I don't have any information with me right now, but I think that it might be a possibility, but definitely inquire. Maybe call an outfitter. Best time of day, really any time. I oftentimes like to catch that first morning light. I find that that's the most available time to me. So I will sometimes be on the water be up by 5, hopefully on the water by 6, off the water by maybe 8, 8:30, and into the office by 9, 9, 9:30, 10 in the morning. Um, what a great way to start the day. And then, if I have nothing going on afterward, just put right back in and fish a couple hours, or maybe just do some short fishing. Um, but anytime you want to fish is the best time. Um, so right now at Midwest Mountaineering, we have a few, I believe, Jackson kayaks. We have some native kayaks coming in still. I encourage you to come into the shop and check them out. Um, they're all very different, but they all relatively function the same. But there are definitely some nuances. So if you need some advice or some help in narrowing down your decision, or even just want to get the conversation started, I definitely encourage you to call the shop or stop on down and get connected with someone in our paddle sports department, um, to let you know when and where some of those boats might be available. We do have some demo possibilities coming up later this summer as well. Um, We do have, I believe, a few of these fishing kayaks in our rental fleet as well. And our rental fleet has been inspected and ready to go. So you can call the shop and find out what we have in stock for rentals. If you're kind of thinking about maybe entering the kayak fishing market, we have a few offerings from Jackson on a rental fleet, so that would give you a nice opportunity to try them without spending a ton of money. And I believe if you rent them and then decide to purchase a fishing kayak, we refund the rental fee. So kind of a nice way to get a little bit of a deal on those. If there's any questions, drop them out in the outdooradventureexpo.com chat box here. Um, I would say most of these fishing kayaks probably range in price from, and I'm talking new here, I would say on the low end, probably 800 up to, $5,000-6,000 at base price. Um, there's a lot of really great boats out there. I think in that sort of, 1,000 to $1,400 price point. To me, that's kind of the sweet spot. I think it gives you the boat, gives you the platform to work off of without giving you so much that you need to sort of work up to that all those extra accessories. I think my personal take on it would be to get a kayak that is um, at its core does everything you want it to, but doesn't have all the flash and bang of all these accessories. Because you might find over time that you like to fish this way, and then you might want to fish this way another day, and this way another day, and interchanging between all those accessories. I know that you won't have to change all of them, but being able to purchase those accessories if you want to when you need them, I think you'll get more use out of them than just being kind of buying a complete package. But um, there's a lot of great uh, fishing kayak groups on social media, Facebook especially. There's always a lot of meetups or virtual tournaments. Hopefully, we can get back into some live in-person fishing tournaments. But those types of fishing groups are always a great support for nothing else, camaraderie or tips and tricks, or finding and meeting new fishing buddies. Um, the see if I can go back to one of these slides here. Um, so right now at Midwest Mountaineering, we have our Outdoor Adventure Expo happening. Kicked off Thursday, this past Thursday, with a boat demo, and then kicked off in store yesterday, Friday. The entire store will be on sale through Sunday, May 2nd. 10% off. I think just about everything in the store. Not positive on the discount on the canoes and kayaks. I will be transparent and say that inventory in that category has been very low. The demand for watercraft has been very high since the pandemic started. So if you have interest or questions regarding boats and availability, I definitely encourage you to call the shop at 612-339-3433 and connect with one of our paddle sports department staff members, and they can kind of give you the lay of the land, so to speak, as to what's available and what might be available in the coming weeks or months. Um, at this point now, I know a lot of our vendors are not accepting or are really minimizing the amount of special orders, so uh, that doesn't bode well for availability. And that to me tells me that the industry is just trying to catch up to the orders that have already been placed. So if you're considering a fishing kayak and are having a hard time finding one, we sometimes often see them posted on our used boat list as well. And if you want to call the shop and inquire as to what's on there, we're happy to help you figure that out as well. Um, I would say that the fishing kayak for me has really opened up a lot of my fishing opportunities. You know, for me, I primarily fly fish. I primarily fish for bass, smallies, largemouth. I love the warm water species, pike and whatnot. Occasionally, I've fished for trout even for my fishing kayak. Some days I just take it out because I know it's stable and it's a big platform for our kids to jump off of into the lake. Use it as sort of a floating dock in sense because it's just so stable and uh, almost sort of worry free. So um, there are a lot of cart systems out there for helping you transport your fishing kayak. The one that I personally use and I have found to be really worked really well for me is um, the Sea Tug Kayak Cart. It's sort of black, hard plastic with some green padding on it. Um, I think they also make some wheels, optional extra wheels that are suited for sand. So if you find yourself um, fishing around a lot of sand, that might be helpful in getting that kayak cart to just function better in the sand. It's got more of a fat tires sort of profile on the wheel system there, but great system, works well. I know Malone makes a good system as well. Um, a lot of these fishing kayak manufacturers probably have their own systems as well. Um, so just look into those. I think it's a critical component unless you're primarily just working off the loading docks. But if you're hoping to, kind of slip in different parts of lakes or rivers, I think the kayak cart is a key accessory. What do you do with the kayak cart after you've put your boat in the water? Depending on how far your car is, I suppose you could put it back in your car. Oftentimes, I just kind of flip mine upside down and keep it behind my seat. They're pretty easy to sort of fold down slash take apart. So you could disassemble it. Probably takes just a couple minutes, and the more frequently you do it, the faster you'll get at it. I think in almost in all cases, or most cases, a lot of these fishing kayak carts don't even have any sort of screws or hardware needed to put them together. Oftentimes they're just kind of locking pins or sort of snap in place sort of components. So they can break down and be assembled pretty quickly, and you can just kind of keep it stored on your boat while you're fishing. Kind of saves you a trip for when you come back and are ready to get off the water. You don't have to walk to your car and get the cart and then walk the boat back up to the car. It really just kind of depends on where you're fishing and what exiting the water looks like for you. But um, so I find that the kayak cart is kind of really indispensable. I mean, my fishing kayak at its base weight alone, I think is somewhere between 85 90 pounds. You add a several pound chair and all the other accessories and components that I might bring, we're probably looking at easily 100 pounds, maybe slightly 115 pounds of gear, and then another 140 to 150 pounds of person. We're already looking at probably close to maybe getting close to 275 pounds. So it's a lot of weight, but a lot of these boats can handle some serious weight. So they can accommodate a lot of paddlers of all different sizes. So if you're interested out there, definitely encourage you to stop by the shop, check them out. I'm always here at the shop, usually kind of a Tuesday through Saturday or Wednesday through Sunday. You can definitely ask for me by name. My name is Adan, and I'd be happy to have a chat with you regarding fishing kayaks, or really anything outdoor related. So if you need some tips and tricks and some new gear, I encourage you to stop by the store. And with that being said, I will say goodbye and thank you for watching our show on kayak fishing. Um, Later on today at 4 o'clock, we have Jared Munch presenting stand up paddleboarding from Duluth to the North American Arctic Ocean. That sounds pretty exciting. And then later on today from 6 to 7 with Annie Nelson, excuse me, presenting on the North Country Trail. All these presentations will be recorded and archived on our YouTube page, so you can watch them there if you've missed out. Hopefully within about 1 to 2 days once they get uploaded. Thanks to everyone who tuned in, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care.